First of all, as ever, apologies for the wind. I'm recording live today at the Harrogate International Conference Centre, and I'm trying to get as close to a little seating area which, well, doesn't exist anymore. It was when they redeveloped the bit down by the light, sort of further down this way. They redeveloped that little bit down there, and they got rid of the little seating area, the little raised seating area that was around in 2003, where I spent a large proportion of the afternoon of April the 8th. And might have to stop because this is quite a busy area. There's a lot of sort of public traffic going on, both inside and outside. What happened 10 years ago today was possibly the worst mistake I've ever made, the worst day of my life, you might like to say. My father has a phrase. He says there's a moment's indiscretion that a lifetime of prudence cannot erase, and if ever that saying is more applicable to a circumstance, it's what happened with me on April the 8th in 2003, exactly 10 years ago. For as long as I can remember, and we're probably talking here mid to late 1980s, I had a habit of messing around and playing with ligatures, and why, I don't know. I don't know how it started. I don't really know how long it went on for. But I do know certain things about it. It's a form of self-harm, but it's not the type where you're inflicting harm on yourself to feel pain, or to do damage to yourself because you believe that you deserve it. It was neither of those. Actually, it was a response to a sort of craving, a strange sensation that would get worse and worse and worse unless I went through with a sort of ritualised form of ligature play. And that used to happen in three different situations. One, if I was extremely happy. One, if I was extremely sad. And so those are forms of mania, although I never really encountered particular sort of mania. It was just prolonged periods of happiness or prolonged periods of sadness which would trigger these sort of feelings, and that then in response to that, of course, there'd be the self-harm. Or, and quite importantly this, if I was extremely nervous about something. These used to take place at night and in my own bedroom, so nobody knew, nobody saw. But sometimes, particularly as I got older, the cravings, the feelings that needed to be sort of quashed would happen during the day, particularly during the morning. And obviously this was a little bit more worrying because I couldn't last the whole day, and the chance of being caught, I suppose, was a lot higher during the day, during the morning, than it would be during the evening when everybody thought I had gone to bed. And one day that happened. It was unfortunately my nan which caught me, and I can't remember exactly the excuse I made, but I made an excuse, and I don't know whether she bought it or not. It's one of those things that we have never talked about since. But she told my parents, and my parents were very concerned, and they got me to see a child psychologist. That was in the late 1996, start of 1997. Now, when I saw the child psychologist, she said something interesting. She said, the problem is, she said, you live a very reserved life, and there is a side of you which is not reserved at all, and which gets repressed. A sort of dangerous side, if you like, a side that not many people see of me today, in fact. And that side sort of wants to get out. One can only live a repressed life for so long. But she said, do not worry, because there are exercises and there are things that we can do which will channel that urge and stop it from building up to the state where it becomes something that you have to respond to with this ritual. And so from 2007 I was pretty much healed of that, and we thought that was it. Now it's funny because in 2004, late 2004, I had need to review my entire medical history, and with a small payment you can do that in this country, and you get to see your file, which includes not only all the information the doctors take from you and they send to you, but also, very intriguingly, the information that they send to each other. One doctor talking to another is frightfully interesting. And when I had finished with the child psychologist in 1997, she sent word back to my doctor, and they talked in this letter about the possibility of me having an anxiety disorder. And at the bottom it said very clearly, this possible diagnosis was not told to the patient. And it wasn't. We had no idea. In some ways, I do wish they had told me, because that might have solved some of the problems later on. But they didn't. It's just interesting that from all that happened in 1997 and before, they had already sort of had an idea that might end up being a problem. So the issues all went away, and time passed, 98, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, and then we arrive at 2003, and around this time in 2003 it was the Easter holidays, and I was on holiday from university, my last year at university in fact, and I might have to step down here because there are people inside now that are looking at me rather strangely. I had to finish my dissertation at home, which I had just about done. And on the 8th of August, sorry, the 8th of April even, my parents and my sisters had all gone out, and I was minding my own business, and I was watching the television. I was watching one of the music channels, and I don't know what happened, and the urge that I had returned, and I went through with the ritual as I suppose I needed to, but you have to remember that it was a ritual that I hadn't practiced in the best part of 5 years. I was out of practice, and it's an extremely dangerous thing to do. And for the first time ever, I made a slight miscalculation, and I blew all the blood vessels in and around my eyes, which absolutely petrified me. So that happened about this time, 10 years ago exactly, or more or less about 11 o'clock. And I first tried to get rid of it, and I remember laying on my back for hours with a flannel over my head, and that didn't work. and so then I sort of took my sunglasses to hide my eyes. It was the weather was nicer than it was today, and I came and I spent most of the day sitting in a little area, not too unlike this, but just a little bit further along that doesn't exist anymore, before I had to go back and tell my parents what had happened when they got home from work, because of course I couldn't hide it. They actually took it extremely well, and you know, there wasn't a lot they could say really, and there wasn't a lot we don't know exactly what triggered it. There are several theories. The first theory, of course, that I was coming to the end of university, didn't have anything to do, facing the unknown. Maybe that had built up enough pressure for me to, you know, get one of those, get that sort of urge. Another possibility is that because I had repressed a second side of myself, in fact, which was very much the topic at that point in time, and that was my homosexuality, perhaps I had reached a point where I couldn't cope with the stress of hiding that, and that caused it. Or maybe it was a combination of all of it. That night we watched a film on television, and I watched it in the lounge, and I don't know what my parents were doing, on the computer or something in the other room, and at every break I used to come through to see them, because by this point I have to admit having a colossal headache, a sort of colossal headache which was, you know, not too far away from a migraine, and I really thought that I was going to die that night. I thought that maybe the damage that I'd done was far, far worse than just blowing a few blood vessels, and that, you know, once I went to sleep I wouldn't wake up. It was a really, really frightening, horrible day. Possibly the worst day of my life. Now, as negative as that sounds, and it has brought some terrible negative consequences with it, I just want to assure everybody that you will understand by the time we've finished with this living and learning why that particular issue with self-harm is cleared up. So I don't want people to worry that I still do anything like that. But obviously it's a story which is unfolding over the years, so I can't exactly tell you the conclusion to it before most of the story. Secondly, the other thing to remember is just how far we have come since then. You know, that was 10 years ago, and I was a very different person back then to what I am now. It was the start of two or three incredibly intense years, and a lot of lessons to be learned. And those are the lessons that we will start to uncover in the weeks ahead.